All right, now I'm joined by Coach Chris Miltenberg, and I figured this is going to be a little bit different of an office hours episode because we'll probably spend maybe the first 40 minutes talking Bruce Springsteen, and then we'll just see if we get around to any track stuff. How's that sound, actually?
That sounds great. I could do way more than 40 minutes talking about that.
All right, but let's actually kick start it with the boss because we connected over just sort of the very funny clip of Parker Valby bashing Bruce, and you came to the boss's defense, and then you hit me with the fact that you've seen him over 40 times. Is that like what is it? What's the count at right now?
Yeah, I think last count I'm at 47 right now. Yeah.
All around the world.
All around the U.S. I wouldn't say all around the world. I've seen them all around the country, though.
When did this? I mean, you're from New York, so when did this really start for you? The
Yeah, I mean,
obsession.
I grew up on it. Like my dad is a huge Springsteen fan, and so I just remember hearing it like everywhere when I was a kid. And I know I have three brothers. We're all really into it, and so and then really when probably when I was like my late teens and in college is like when it kind of I became into it on my own. And but he didn't play for a long time. So I saw him for the first time in the summer of 2000 when I was 20. He played in the Garden, and I saw him for the first time in the Garden. I think he played 6 shows, and I saw three of them that summer. And then the obsession has been ever since. And it's like his music's just like a huge part of my life. I my dog is named Bruce even. So yeah, no, I love it.
So are you the type of guy? I know Mark is very quick to take over the aux cord at practice and play a little Bruce. And, we got into that disagreement. I got into that disagreement with Parker. That's like, no, you actually can work out and run to Bruce Springsteen music. And she was not a fan of that. But are you the type of guy to up the vibes at practice with a little, I don't know, dancing in the dark? What would be your go to?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. I never do that at practice because I think it is so far removed from anything our athletes would want to hear at all, which breaks my heart. When I ride in the van with them, and man, the things they listen to now, no, But I go along with it because you got to meet them where they're at. So no, I hardly ever jump on that. But if I was going to take over, yeah, probably some stuff off. Born in the USA or off Born to Run, Darkness, depending on the day. Whenever we do a hill workout, and it's probably so not funny to the athletes, but I always the day before we're doing a hill workout and cut and paste into our training logs the quote from the end of Darkness on the Edge of Town, where he says, "Tonight I'll be out on that hill because I can't stop." I get a kick out of it. I'm sure they don't even get the reference, but every time we're doing hills, I use that one.
We got to educate the youth in some way, shape, or form. All right, so we're chatting a couple weeks removed from the NCAA indoor championships. Have you recovered, I guess, from a crazy weekend down in Virginia Beach?
Yeah, I mean, it was great. It was, certainly for us, it was a 24-hour swing of up and down, and but you got to love that part of it. And so, yeah, it definitely was nice for us because we were easy trip home, and then we're ready to keep going.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start there, and then we'll kind of work our way all around like your coaching career. But you're definitely someone who has been very clear about just like not stressing, like getting too emotionally attached to like the outcome of a race. I watched like the post race interview that you did from Virginia Beach, and so when that DMR doesn't go someone like Ethan's way, like how do you get them into that right mindset that 22, 23 hours later they're able to bounce back and put together one of the best performances of the whole entire meet?
Yeah, I mean that was a tough night Friday night, and I think it was a great even for me and Ian. It was a great recalibration even for us as well as the guys. I mean, make no doubt about it, man. Like they wanted to win. They were that was a mission they had been on for a while. And you can't deny they wanted to win, right? I think we talk about outcome and process, and I don't think that the two are separable, right? But I do think we got away from what we do really well, which is, hey, we do recognize we want to win, and then we put that away a week out and go work on how we're going to execute and what we're going to do. And if you look at Ethan's season, all the things he did, we never set out to run 730. We never set out to run 348. We said, hey, what are we working on right now? Let's go execute and practice this. Continue to hone your skills. Same thing when he won the ACC 5000. And I think we all admitted after that night, like, yeah, we thought about winning. And if you look at even the move that he made. And don't get me wrong, you could have made a ton of different moves and the outcome may have been the same. You're talking about another world-class guy on the anchor there. But it's uncharacteristic of him. And I think it was him getting away from what he does best. And I think that all hit us immediately after that race and later that night. And so, what we talked about is like, one, getting back to who we are. Like, nothing changes. Like, we're at the national meet. It's no different than what we do everywhere else we go. And then, two, like, you have to love the ups and downs too, right? Like, and Ethan, much different than, say, Parker right now. Like, his last 3 months, everything he's touched has turned to gold, right? And, like, that's never going to last forever. And you got to be okay with both parts of it. And that's how he's a really special one, is like that ability to turn around 22 hours like that. That's what only the great ones can do. And he got back to being himself.
Yeah. So is there anything that you kind of over the years have just kind of developed in terms of a checklist of sorts when it comes to assessing a race when it doesn't go well with an athlete? Like, that immediate sort of debrief, you let them kind of, have their moment to cool off a bit. But when you're sitting down, I mean, like, at a championship, it's so close because it's already like on to the next thing and you kind of want to put that behind you. But all throughout the season, like, are there, sort of questions where it's like, what happened? Where did I go wrong? Was I prepared for that move or whatever it might be? Like, how do you go about assessing a bad race? Even though, like, that wasn't I'm not saying that was a bad race.
Yeah, I think you have to go back to what were we trying to do, right? Regardless of the outcome, what were we working on in that moment? What were we trying to do? And then you zoom out and say, okay, separate from the outcome, did we do that well or did we not? Or true for me, sometimes, like, were we ready to do what I thought we could do? And that's where I look in the mirror a lot, is like, man, did I give them clear sense of what we can and can't do right now, or was my gauges off on that? And I think, look, we're competitive, man. To say the outcome, we don't think about it. Yeah, like, we walk away and you have to, like, catch your breath, take some space for a second, and then say, okay, did we set out to do what we set out to do? And I think that's a moment right there. That is a crucial moment because, you talk about process versus outcomes. And if you preach the process every day of the week, but then in the outcomes afterwards, when they don't go well, that's what you focus on, you lose all credibility with your athletes and what you're talking about in there. And so I really try to catch myself on that, in that space between when it finishes and when I get to them.
Yeah. I guess, like, the fun part of having these office hours coaches discussions is now that, like, I've kind of created the spectrum of, like, the coaches who only want to talk about the process and totally remove the outcome. That's the Zen master Mike Smith, just sort of like, never, are we going to talk about, like, the results of what the end of the season will be, versus, the other side of the spectrum is Dave Smith, who's like, no, it's okay to talk about winning. And, I do openly talk about winning. Where do you fall kind of like in that wide range?
Yeah, I listened to your interview with Dave, and I thought that was awesome that he acknowledged, hey, we do want to win, and we say that openly. And Mike is my best friend. We talk every day about this stuff, and I think they both matter. Right? They both matter. And you have to be willing to acknowledge and recognize, of course we want to win, right? Of course we want to be competitively successful. And to say we don't is like, you're kidding yourself, right? So the sooner we can flesh that out and say, okay, that's what we want. That's what we want to have happen. Like, we do this a lot with our goal setting, is like, I used to be solely set process goals because we said we're so not about the outcome. That was super, super flawed. Because, of course, they think about the outcome. They're competitive. So the sooner we can talk about that, flesh it out and say, okay, this is what we want to have happen. Well, okay, how are we going to get there? Now let's go focus on the process. And so I think they both matter, right? We absolutely talk, especially early on in a season, like what we want to accomplish. And then you put that on the shelf and you go focus on the process day to day. And so, yeah, I think they're inextricably linked. And so we talk about the outcomes we want, and then we get to how are we going to get there. Let's go hold ourselves to that.
If we would have put a heart rate monitor on you at the NCAA championships when the women's 800 was taking place and Makayla Paige almost goes down, and then just sort of like the dramatics of how that race unfolded, what would all of the data told us? How much of an emotional wreck were you a bit?
Well, yeah, I mean, there definitely would have been a spike when she almost fell there. I mean, that was, oh man, I aged 10 years in that half a second right there. And then the next 90 seconds afterwards were, we really, really thought she could win, and we talked zero about that with her at all. And then some within our coaching staff. And even particularly like my sprints coach and my jumps coach who've been with us forever, they kept telling me, they're like, Milt, I think she's as good as any of the ones we've had, man. I think she can win. I'm like, nobody say this outside this room. Like, stays in this room. Let's go focus on with Makayla, like, hey, we're working on how to execute at this level. What are we doing here? And so with Makayla, like, we never talked about it. Like, hey, what are we going to work on? But we all did think there was a chance if she did what she could do, that she could win. And so then over the next 90 seconds, it's like watching it play out. Now, here's what I was worried about, though. When you get tripped up like that, or, if you ever fallen in a race and you pop right back up, you get this massive hit of adrenaline, right? That will carry you for 15 to 30 seconds. So until she crossed the line, I was still like, okay, is this just a spike that happened right now? Can you sustain this? And I mean, she more than sustained it. She powered away the last 100 meters. So, yeah, it was awesome.
How important is that just element of allowing the athlete to surprise himself when you as the coaches see what you see in practice and you can observe splits and all that kind of stuff, and so you have an idea of like just how good an athlete can be, but then it's allowing the athlete to find out for themselves like how good they are? Like, is that, I mean, not just in the case of Makayla, but I'm sure you've had kind of examples like that over the years where it's like, oh, no, let the athlete find out for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to be balance of talking clearly with them of like what you believe they can do like within a range right now, because I do think like people can set themselves up for failure, or you can set them up for failure by not talking about that openly, right? Like if somebody sits in my office and says, hey, I want to run 13:30 right now, and I know, hey, at best we can run 13:55 right now. You need to be honest with them about that, because that's the only way they're going to get to 13:30. It's like, okay, hey, dude, let's go run 13:55. Let's go run 13:47 in a month. And so there's a little bit of that where you definitely, when you have highly driven and ambitious people, it's helping them get excited for the steps they have to take to where they want to go. But I think to your bigger question is more like, we always talk about that. It's like, it's an exploration. Like, let's go see what we can go do. When those guys ran 7:30, we sat in the hotel 2 hours before leaving, and we're like, it's cool. Like, you guys know you're in a great spot right now. Hey, let's see what we can go do right now. And let's not be afraid to push it and see where the limit lies.
One big thing that you preach is that, not changing what we do. And I think that that's so interesting when, something like that 7:30 happens and you still have a full season ahead of you. And then there's still, so many outside factors that have come into the sport where, all the technological advances and the bicarb and all this kind of stuff that has made people just get these marginal gains. And you've been doing things one way. How set in your ways are you, and how hard is that to just, we're going to stay the course right now. We're not going to change things up, even though like there's all these other things that say we could get faster.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, one of the things I pride myself on that I really learned from Pat Henner, my coach, is like, never, ever stop learning and evolving, right? Like, never stop learning and evolving. Like, I think if you had Grant Fisher here today at practice with us and he watched, one, the training, two, some of the things we talk about, he'd say, whoa, this is way different than 8 years ago. And like, I take pride in that. It's like, yeah, it's evolution over time. So no, our training has very much evolved with the times and evolved with the technology and what it enables us to do in training. Like, I feel really proud. I think we're pretty cutting edge on that, while the fundamental principles don't change of what we believe it takes to be successful, but more importantly, like what we focus on day to day, is competing, growth mindset all the time. Like that stuff doesn't change. How we change is evolved. We've never, ever gotten caught up in the time chasing that I think is so prevalent right now. And so those things are timeless. Like, you got to be timely and timeless at the same time, right? Like, our core principles are timeless, but then being timely and like how we adapt to the training, all those things. Yeah, I think I like to be a middle of the road adapter. You don't want to be first adapter. You want to watch and observe, and you certainly don't want to be last adapter. Even with the shoe technology, all these things, like I think we're pretty good middle of the road adapters.
All right, so I kind of want to go through a little bit of that evolution in just sort of like the coaching philosophy that you've had over the years. So we start off, I guess, like at the very, kind of beginning, graduating Georgetown. You had a great career there. You run professionally for a year. Then what's it like to kind of just like take that intensity and competitiveness that you had as an athlete and then jump into coaching so young?
Um, yeah, I mean, even the evolution of like knowing I wanted to be a coach really in that year when I tried to run professionally during 2003, 2004. Um, really feeling like I go even a step before that, kind of how I got to that place, because I think it answers your question. Is like, when I went to college, my undergrad degree is in finance, right? Like I thought for sure I was going to go work on Wall Street, and that's what all my friends were going to do. And as I got towards the end of my third year, going into my fourth year, I really started to feel like, man, like I want to do something that is way more impactful than that. Like, how do I help people? And for me in my life, like all the most important lessons I've learned, everything I've gotten, like it's really come from the sport. Like everything came through the medium of the sport, way more than I ever learned in a classroom or anything like that. And for me, my coaches, high school, but really Pat Henner, my coach in college, like the connection I had with him, the impact he had on me, my life still does to this day. Like nobody's had a bigger impact on me. And so the idea like, hey man, I can go to work every day and give that back. And so like it was this evolution over my last 2 years of like, okay, I want to do something impactful. And so, but I wasn't sure it was coaching yet. And so then I thought, okay, well, maybe I want, like my last 2 years in college, I took all the pre-med requirements. So I thought, okay, so 03, 04, I'd finished college. My degree was in finance, but I had also taken pre-med classes. I thought I'd apply to med school. And, Mike Smith at NAU and I were living together that year. And, man, I just like could not bring myself to think about actually studying for the MCAT or any of that stuff. And I was like, I don't think this is for me. And so that's when it really came to like, man, I want to do something where I make an impact. And so during the winter of '04, man, I emailed every coach in America, D1, D2, D3, offered to volunteer, anything to get started. And at like the 11th hour, I got the opportunity to go to Columbia as a grad assistant and go back to New York, which was awesome for me. And so to your question, like, it wasn't like applying competitive drive to necessarily like the outcomes of the athletes, but like just diving all in with all my energy. Like I remember pretty quickly, like being totally okay in October of my first year, like, man, like I don't care if I get in a run today. Like, how do I go help these guys today? And I got consumed pretty quick with it.
So in preparation for this, I chatted with a couple of people who've worked with you over the years, and they have said that you're one of the most passionate coaches out there. When did that sort of develop? Like, was that always there, just sort of in those early years? And like, how do you think that that's kind of impacted your ability to coach, both positively and negatively? Like, I'm sure you have to ride both sides of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I take that as a huge compliment. I think, again, that's how I was coached, and this idea that like you can really pour into people. But I think, like you said, it's been positive and negative at times for sure. Because, dude, I love this when I was an athlete. I loved it. I really believed in like pouring yourself into something is much more than the outcomes. It's how you find out the most about yourself. And when like I always joke, I'm like, if you're really into it, I'm a pretty good coach. Like if you're not that into it, I'm not a very good coach. And so I love working with people that are really equally passionate about it. So, I think it's helped because I can match people's passion and enthusiasm. Probably where it's maybe hurt has been like people that aren't as passionate about it, like it's not always a great fit for me along the way.
Yeah. So what did you learn, I guess, in the Ivy League chapter of your coaching career? Like in the early 2000s, I guess, like what were sort of the big takeaways from those first couple of years at Columbia?
Yeah, I mean that was an awesome experience for me. Like I worked under Willie Wood was the head coach at Columbia at the time, and he could not have been more different than Pat Henner, who had been my coach, which was great for me. And like Willie like did so much for me and gave me an opportunity, but also just taught me so much. And but they were really different in every way, like right down to even the training principles to the day-to-day interactions with people, like. And that was so good for me because I was so myopically believed in my coach that I was like, oh, this is the only way to do things. And like, thank goodness I did not get a chance to go back and work with him right away. Like I needed to go work with other people and see a different environment. And like he was so good, Willie, at just understanding like the parameters of the situation these student athletes were in, right? Like the academic demands, the environment we were in, and also like what their goals were. Like they had chosen there for a reason. Like they had certain, what their goals were and maybe what they weren't too, like, and it wasn't world-class aspirations always. It was, and so he was just so good at adapting to people. So, I learned so much from him in that way, really. And I remember he told me this when I took the job. He said, if you can learn to recruit here, you can recruit anywhere, man. And, in the Ivy League, you have obviously you have a great academic opportunity to offer people, but you have no scholarships. And even within that time, like within the 8 Ivy League schools, like there was a very unique kid that wanted to come to New York City, right? So our recruiting was volume based. And so what I learned is how to work. Like I learned how to work. Like we worked 7 days a week, every single night. We'd start making calls on the East Coast and we'd work our way west as the clock went on. And it was 5 hours a night, every night, 7 days a week. We probably every year had more than 100 people come on visits to yield 8 or 10. And so my bar standard of what like recruiting work ethic was formed right there. Of like, yeah, this is a like hard 365-day a year process. That is recruiting. And so yeah, probably the single most important thing I learned there for sure.
That's really cool to hear, just because it's like, it feels like there's value obviously in not going to just like a national championship contending school like right away, and having to put in that time and work to kind of go through all the highs and lows with a school like Columbia at the time. But then after that, I guess like you get the call from Georgetown. How did that opportunity come about, and was that just like a quick, yeah, I'm in?
Yeah, no, that was so what had happened was, when I was in college, Pat Henner was the men's distance coach, but Ron Helmer was the director of the whole program. And really, day to day, he coached the women. Pat coached the men, and they had a great relationship. And in the spring of '07, we were just about to get married. We were getting married that summer. We had a new apartment in New York. We were gonna move in, and we were leaving to go to the regional meet. And Pat called me and he's like, Helmer just took the job in Indiana. And I'm like, oh my God, man. He's like, I'm gonna try to get the job. If I get it, will you come? And then we were in Sacramento for the NCAAs. And like every minute that we were not at the track, Pat and I were like in our hotel working on this strategic plan document that he put together to interview at Georgetown. And, and then we were at the USA's in Indianapolis and he got the call that he got the job. And so I called my wife. We were getting married in a few weeks, and I was like, "Hey, she was in New York." And I was like, "Hey, keep packing, but don't move our stuff to the new place. We're going to move to DC instead." And so that was that summer. Well, my wife went to Georgetown too, so the chance to go back was big for us. It didn't go over great in the moment, but by the end of the summer, it was awesome when we were back in DC. And that for me, like when I was at Columbia, I was there 3 years. I never rode a single workout, and so I really learned how to like play my role really well. Like that's something that Willie told me. He's like, man, if you can, max out on the things you're getting to do, don't worry about what you don't get to do. Like eventually the next opportunity will present itself, and like, yeah, I never rode a single workout. We talked training, but like he was the coach and I was the assistant coach and I recruited my ass off. And so then the chance to go have my own group and go back to Georgetown and basically I had the women and Pat had the men, and man, he let me run with it. Like he totally let me run with it. I was 26 years old at the time, and he was there as a backstop, and I'd ask him for advice every day. But he's like, "It's your thing, man. Do it." And like that was trial by fire for me, and especially then because even just then taking over a women's team, that was so good for me because it's easy to coach autobiographically, I think, right? Particularly as a young guy, not that far removed from my own running. I just can think in terms of my own workouts. Like something as simple as like I remember writing our first workouts with women and be like, I got to learn these paces. Like, okay, what are these? And it's like, sounds so obvious now, but like, it was really helped me like get out of my own athletic experience and think about the people I had. Yeah, that was, but that, for us, the chance to go back to Georgetown was like, for one, life-changing, and two, just like really meant a lot to us to go back there too.
Were you always kind of curious on the coaching side of things under Willie and even just kind of even before with Pat, like as an athlete, just asking, about workouts, their purpose, and like what athletes should get out of it, that helped develop a little bit of like that early understanding of your own coaching style?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Mike Smith and I talk about this all the time. Like we have athletes on our teams now that were like, oh, that must have been us. Like the ones who were just in the office, sitting on the couch, asking questions. And want to talk about it when we probably should be studying instead. And, so yeah, but I don't think at that point I knew I wanted to do this, but I was definitely fascinated, quickly becoming obsessed with it and learning more about it. But really, like when I was running, I think part of why I was, however successful I was because like I didn't question anything though either. It was like I thought my number one competitive advantage when I stood on the line was that Pat Henry was my coach. So I was like, okay, whatever he says, man, like that must be the way to do it. But you slowly like just were starting to learn more. Like I learned more probably thinking about him was like how he coached our team, like our culture, like our standards, our mentality that was evolving. Like I was probably way more fascinated with that part than I was the workouts back then. That probably came more later on.
When do you start to feel like, all right, I've got the hang of this at Georgetown, and you're like, you get your first kind of taste of success, and you're like, all right, we're on to something special here.
Well, I still don't feel that way now. Some days I'm like, I don't know if I've got the hang of it because you have as many days where you go up as you go down, and I think you never ever let yourself really think you've got it figured out. And like my first year at Georgetown, there we got second to last at NCAA's in cross country, and we had somebody get 10th, right? So, and you got to remember, like before Ron Helmer left, he had 15 straight years in the top 10, like 15 straight years in the top 10 on the women. Now the last couple years weren't as good, but like the bar was high for sure. And we had, that first year, I'm trying to remember some of the specifics. Like I think Maggie Infeld and Liz Malloy made the final outdoors in the 1500, but didn't score. But then the next year we got ninth. We got ninth the very next year. And for a moment I was like, man, maybe we're on to something here, like a little bit. But again, you go up and down so much that it was really those last 2 years, we got fourth and then we won in cross country, and Emily Infeld was really rolling, and we had an awesome like 800 through 5K group, like really, really good energy. So yeah, I started to really feel like, okay, I think I'm getting a sense of how to build a team here too, as much as the training part did.
What made that 2011 team so special? And are there like elements of it that you still look back on and think like, whoa, all right, like if we pull that and apply it to any team, like it would be good?
Yeah, I mean, I learned so much from that team that I think I maybe have spent the last decade trying to replicate, or just chase after that. Not the outcome, but like I only now 13 years later have such appreciation for how unique and special that group was. Mainly just like their interpersonal relationships, like just how awesome they were with each other together. Like when you have somebody like Emily Infeld, who was our leader, and man, it just had this awesome trickle down effect that I just was like, oh yeah, this is normal. And like, man, I've been 13 years removed, and I'm like, man, that was not normal. Like that was an incredible group that was having fun together every day, had a really clear vision of what they wanted to accomplish, but never got past like, hey, what are we doing today? Like, Emily Infeld, even that season, like she was hurt in the middle of that season for 2 weeks, close to 2 weeks. And we started the season ranked number one in the country. And then we went to the pre-nationals and got destroyed. The only meet we won the whole year was the national meet. We didn't win a single meet the entire year other than the NCAA meet. And so it was just this group that believed and stuck together. And, even if you look at how we did it, we scored 162 points, which is an incredibly high score to win. Emily was fourth, and then I believe we were like 43rd, 46th, 51st, 54th, something like that. It was like they just ran together.
Over the years, I guess you still have this relationship with Emily Infeld, where like now you're coaching her as she's going to kind of start to take this step toward the roads. But have you kind of seen her evolve as like this team leader, and then you've kind of got glimpses of Emily Infeld, the athlete, in a variety of different capacities over the years?
Yeah, I mean, and there's a handful of people out there that, and Emily being very near the top of this list, if not the sole person at the top, who like it is never lost on me that like without them, like man, I'm probably selling Toyotas somewhere. That if they didn't buy in and trust me and give me a chance, that like there's no way I'm sitting where I'm at today. Like that is never lost on me. So like I think about Emily Infeld, like I was 26 years old, and she was arguably the best recruit in the country, maybe one of the top 2 or 3 recruits in the country, and like she came and gave me a chance, like, and trusted me, and I think that was in large part because her sister Maggie was already on the team at Georgetown. Liz Malloy was on the team, and like I have no idea why, but they trusted me first. And like there's just was this incredible group thing we had going. Like I really look back and I'm like, man, I don't know why they trusted me. Like I was so young, I really had nothing to stand on, and so like it's never lost on me. Like man, like that, Emily, Liz, Maggie, Renee Tomlin, like they trusted me, and then that's how I feel about Sean McGorty too. Like he was my first great men's recruit. Like at the point I went to Stanford, I hadn't coached men at all, and so like I felt that way. I'm like, man, Sean was the best recruit in the country, right? Mailer than Cheserek in that class, who wasn't coming to us, obviously. Like, man, I don't know what he was thinking, trusting me either, And so, like, so to your question about Emily, like her evolution and even the fact that we're working together again now, like, it's just like that part is so like I take that so personally. Like, man, I'm grateful and so yeah, her evolution's been incredible, and she has a bronze medal, and I tell this story to our team all the time. I will never forget her freshman year. She got 60th at the NCAA cross country meet. We're on the way back. And she's like looking at the results, which at the time were printed out because you didn't even get them on your phone yet then. And she's like, man, there were 3 freshmen in the top, I think 2 in the top 10 and 3 in the top 20. And again, I remember saying like, hey, trust me, like this is going to take time. And if we do it right, like you don't want to be in the top 10 right now. Like we're going to do this right over a long period of time. And, those women that were in the top 10 as freshmen were not in the top 100 as seniors. And definitely 10 years later, arms still running and have bronze medals, right? And Emily went 60th, then she got 8th, then she got 2nd, then she got 4th by inches in there. And 10 years later, she's still going. And so I tell that story all the time to our freshmen, is like, hey, we do this differently. Like we're going to do this the right way, and we're going to do it for the long haul. And like, again, she was the first one to really trust that and stick with it too.
Well, so that's the other common element in, some chats with your former athletes, like whether it's been Grant Fisher or Elise Cranny, like in interviews that I've done with them, the first thing that comes up when we look back at, their time at Stanford and working with you is this, they always underscore the fact that you have always had a bigger picture, long-term vision when it came to their development. Did it start then, like I guess like with Emily at Georgetown, and then you kind of carried that through at Stanford?
Yeah, I mean, and again, it goes back to Pat, right? To Pat Henner of like he and we certainly weren't world class at the time, but he talked to us that way, right? He talked about like I thought I could be that good, and I wanted to be that good, and he would talk to me that way, and I just remember that meant so much to me. He's like talking to me about running as a pro, and hey, we're going to be patient, and I'm like, man, this guy believes I can do that, and like that was really powerful. And so it's one like when people they believe and respond to that. But I think more to your question about like how we've approached their development, I think that's like a personal responsibility way more than even a philosophy. Is like that's a personal responsibility. Like when I remember recruiting Emily, and she's like, yeah, I want to be world class. Like I want to be a pro. I mean, Sean McGorty, I remember sitting with him and his parents. I was, he's from Northern Virginia, which is basically, right outside DC. I went to his house before I went to California for the very first time. And I'm talking to him and his dad, and just like, yeah, he's got world class aspirations. Like, man, I'm not paying lip service to that. Like, we're gonna take that seriously every day and think in those terms. And so yeah, one, I feel like it's a very personal responsibility. Two, like, man, I really, particularly with what's happening right now in the sport, I love thinking that we play some very, 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 very small role in this now insurgence of American distance running at the world level, because we left some meat on the bone when they were in college, and they kept coming out and getting better too.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be when you say it, like it's a personal thing too. Like it also has to come from the coach not being selfish. I'm going to squeeze all the talent out of this person in the 4 or 5 years that I have out of them, and then like they're not my responsibility after their time in school. Like, so how much, I guess, meat was did you know was left on the bones? You actually don't know until maybe 10 years later, and we see Grant Fisher walk away from the Paris Olympics with 2 medals. But I mean, even with someone like him, he came into Stanford as the top recruit in his class. With the sub 4 mile as a high schooler, all this attention. He goes through the development process at Stanford, and there's this big promise of like this guy's going to be good. And you as a coach, like, can, develop that talent? Is there pressure and just sort of like, I don't want to mess this up, but at the same time, like, this is big picture, like this kid's got potential beyond the 4 or 5 years that I have him.
Yeah, no, and that idea of like I don't want to mess this up, man. Like I take that personally and carry that maybe even too heavily sometimes. It's like, okay, when say with Sean and then Grant were really or Elise was very much that too. It's like, okay, they trusted me. Like, man, I you do feel like the eyes are on them too. Grant was my first real experience that of like, okay, this is not made up. Like there are kids asking for his autograph. Like people are observing his development, and that I think that Stanford taught me that. Like I learned a lot of things at Stanford. Probably one at the top of the list was like how to stay insular with your people and believe in what you're doing, regardless of what the outside world says. Because, here's the part about Stanford nobody understands, right? It's like they were going to Stanford too, like and only even now removed from there, I think they could all tell you like yeah, that was hard. Like that environment was hard, like all of it. And it's not just the academic workload, but there was a lot too. And it's like, so I felt like that with Grant, Elise, all of them. It's like, hey, we got to like adapt to the situation we're in here. And I can't compare apples to orange to what somebody's doing somewhere else. Like we know what we're working with, we know what we're doing. And we were just really, insularly partnered in that all the time.
Yeah, because I guess maybe it's around 2021, 2022 when those, former Stanford athletes have these massive jumps and like, probably, Jerry being a good coach, developing those athletes with Bowerman, like a lot of people scratch their heads is like, oh, I didn't think that they would be this good. Like there was, moments at Stanford in the NCAA where they were getting beat or finishing fourth in races, and the people who beat them like didn't go on to have as flourishing of a careers as them. When you kind of look at just sort of like that trajectory of things, how does it make sense to you as the guy who saw them day in and day out at Stanford?
Yeah, I mean, I think about that a lot. And again, like, what did I learn and how can I apply it now? And so I don't say this to sound defensive, but like it might sound a little defensive. And they were going to Stanford at the time too.
Yeah.
They were like I cannot emphasize like how unique that environment and challenging that environment was. And even if I'm sure if we opened up their training logs right now, you'd be like, that's all they were doing. It's like, believe me, that's all they could do at the time. So I just think I take a lot of pride. Like, man, we adapted to where they were at in their life in that moment. We did everything we could to keep them healthy and steadily progressing. And they left wanting to run. Like they left wanting to run. Like there was so much left, like emotionally in the tank in the end there. And so, yeah, when they really started to take off in the end, like I'd like to say I really did think they could do that. I really did. And I thought, man, once they get out of this environment and they can sleep and recover and, just decompress a little bit, like, man, they're going to get so much better. And I really, again, say I honestly am not surprised at all. Like Grant today, Elise today, like none of it surprises me at all, knowing them when they were that young.
The greats from Stanford: Grant, Elise, Sean, Aislinn Cuff, Jess Ton. Like, did they all have like? Was there any element of just like the way that they carried themselves or approach racing and training that they all kind of had in common that sticks out to you as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, particularly like those that you named, there was a really, really common thread among all of them at Stanford that I'm seeing replicate now here too at Carolina is they were not afraid to be clear on what they wanted in an environment where a lot of signs were telling you that you shouldn't want that, right? So what I mean is like Sean, for example, he at 18 years old in Palo Alto, when the whole world is telling you you should be working at a tech company and starting a startup in your dorm room, and he's like, "No, listen, I'm going to do really well in school." He's like, "But I want to be a world class athlete," and you were like an outlier if you could say that and hold yourself to it and not get caught up in what everybody else thought you should be doing with that moment in your life. And that was Grant the same. Elise, truthfully, I think would be the first to tell you she struggled with that at times. Like, is it enough to just want to be a world-class athlete? Like, is that okay? Are you allowed to say that out loud in this environment? I mean, you don't also want to, start a tech company in your dorm room? And it's like, no, I want to be a world-class athlete. Is that okay? And so that was the common thread through them for sure. Ashlyn Cuff was exactly the same. Like she knew who she was and what she wanted and didn't let anybody or else or the environment tell her to change that. That's timeless. That's universal. I see that with my best people here now, the same. And so it was that. And then they're fiercely competitive. Like they love to challenge themselves. They love to just be seeking out those edges all the time. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of like key universal traits through there.
What's it take to also just kind of run a program that has success year round, like all 3 seasons, cross, indoor, outdoor? Because this is something I think I discussed with Dave. It's like you look at some schools or even Gibby. It's like, all right, well, we're going to just prioritize cross country and indoor not so much. We'll come back storming, come outdoor season. But especially at Stanford, like looking at it, just the success of the NCAA cross country podiums and then indoor team finishes, outdoor team finishes, like you found a way to keep it going all throughout.
Yeah, I think it's hard. Like I do think it's hard on the athletes. It's a long year, and I think we do a good job of recognizing like, hey, the highly driven athletes, like right now today, like Ethan and Parker, like they want to train so badly right now. We're 10 days removed from NCAAs. They're running and everything, but like, no, they're going to run well into the summer right now. And I think what it takes is as a coach, it takes discipline. Like it's funny, right before you and I got on, I just opened this email and I had all the entries from the Raleigh relays, which start tomorrow night. And I started looking at the heat sheets and I thought, oh my God, like these people that ran indoor nationals are running this weekend. Like my guys are like, they're jogging around town right now. And that's not criticizing other coaches. I just think it is really easy to get reactive and get caught up in like, you got to do this now. You got to do this now. And like, I think we do a good job of staying steady and grounded of what's our plan. Do not open the results every Monday morning and start reacting all the time. Like, because, and usually by the end, it all comes out in the wash, right? It all comes out in the wash and we're pretty good by the end. And so I think that's what we've done really well. It's like, we've never just been like constantly reacting. Like indoors sucks that way. If you have people that are trying to go to the national meet, dude, I like list anxiety, like you're reacting every Monday to the list. Like I think we do a pretty good job of not doing that, which then leaves a lot of room to run on the back half in late spring.
Yeah, there is a lot wrong with the way indoors is run now, where it's just become time trial after time trial, and like every weekend spent at BU. But that's like a whole bigger conversation, I'm sure, to try and unpack. One thing I was curious about was just sort of kind of from the jump from Georgetown to Stanford and then Stanford to UNC, is how difficult is it from just hearing you speak, just sort of on the personal side of things too, to move on from a program and the people that you recruited, that you invested so much time in recruiting and building, because, and I'm using the word like moving on and not just walking away, because I feel like that's like a different connotation, but you've done this, I guess, now at Columbia, Georgetown, Stanford, and like it's rewarding to build something great and then take the next opportunity, but it's got to be hard too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard in different ways every single time. When I left Columbia, that I was really young, and the opportunity to go back to Georgetown, and truthfully, like I said, like I was an assistant coach. I had great relationships with those athletes, or those guys, still do now, some of them, and but that was a really like logical move in my career at that moment. And when I left Georgetown, and you got to remember, like my wife and I both went to Georgetown too. And truthfully, when I got into coaching, my only dream in the world was to coach back at Georgetown, right? Like, some part of me still thinks it may end up circling back someday. I don't know, and like, so, but when I was there, like, I think we built something really, really special in that moment of time, those 5 years with that group and with that women's team, and the opportunity to work with Pat every day. But like one of the things I really became like fascinated with was scale. Like I felt like our women's distance group, I had no assistant coach. I was me and them, 17 athletes, 14 athletes, every day. And it was awesome. And I thought, okay, I think we got this culture really, really in a good place. Can we scale it? And I was fascinated with like, can I become a director and scale this? Like, will it work? And so, that whole last year at Georgetown, year and a half, I started thinking like, man, I really want to get a chance to see if I can do this. Like, can I scale it and be a director? And in like very shortly after we won the NCAA championship in 2011, I interviewed for the head coaching job at Virginia that December because Jason Vigilante had left, and I didn't get the job. And like I think that was just like serendipity, like that was meant to be. And the Stanford thing happened that summer, and like I will never forget this. Is like the day my son was born. I was in the hospital, and Brian Bell, the coach at Syracuse, texted me, and we both of our sons are born on the same day, the same year, like same exact day. So we're both in the hospital, and he texted me, and he's like, "Man, Edric just left Stanford," and I remember thinking, like, "Man, like, I mean, that's the gold standard job as a distance coach, and like, that man, I wonder who's going to go there. Like, I'm going to try, and like, I basically harassed the administrators that were there over email, and anyway, to your question, like how that all came to be, that when I left, man, I'll never forget this. Like we, our AD at Georgetown and Pat said, hey, we're gonna let you tell them in person. Like we'll have a women's team meeting, but like if you're gonna do it, like dude, you got to walk out. Like it's done. Like we're gonna call them in. We're gonna have a meeting because it happened. Like this is crazy timing, but like we started practice on a Friday for cross country. Like that's how late in the summer this happened. We started practice. Like we had the athletes came on a Thursday. We started practice on a Friday morning. Friday night, I got a call from Stanford. Like it had been quiet for like 2 or 3 weeks. I thought it was over. It was dead. I thought it was over. And Friday night, I got a call and they offered me the job. And I took the job on Sunday. In fact, Emily Infeld came to our house and babysat while my wife and I went out to dinner and talked about if we're going to do it or not. So anyway, so we have a meeting on Monday, and I remember they said, okay, yeah, you can come in and talk to them, but like when you do it, like you're walking out, like that's it, it's over, And I'm like, okay. And so like we go in this meeting room, I tell them, and then I walk out of the room, and then Pat talks to them and our athletic director, and like, dude, I left. Like they were like, hey, this is it. You got to have the boxes packed. Like, and then I mean, you remember I went there too. Like driving away from there was like, oh man, dude, I can place myself back there immediately right now. That feeling I had, and so yeah, that like I will never forget how hard that feeling was, and then especially those first months at Stanford, like you remember that Mike Smith, my best friend in the world, takes over the job too, right? And so it's like that was really hard for me emotionally. Like I was happy for him, and that was like, yeah, it just was. It's really hard. And then when we left Stanford, we were at Stanford for 7 years. And, when I first went to California, I was like, okay, this is a great career move. Like, and where will this go? And, by the end, like we were there, like we loved it. Like we had been there long enough that like we had our own people coming through, and my kids were born at Georgetown, 2 were born at Stanford. And, yeah, like that leaving like there was again, really, really hard. And, particularly like Grant was about to graduate. And I was really excited about the next act. Like we had an awesome young group of guys, and we're like, we're going to now show that what we're going to do without Grant and Sean too. And so then leaving that group of guys that we had really, built that mentality up going into the next year. And then my first month at Carolina, I was sick every day. Like I was driving in every day thinking like, man, I could be coaching Alex Osberg right now. Like I could be coaching Thomas Ratcliffe, Stephen Fahey, and I didn't know these guys. Like they're good guys, but like you don't know them, And so yeah, man, it's hopefully I don't plan to ever do it again. To be honest with you, because it's gut wrenching for a while there.
Did it make it a little bit easier from the jump to Carolina when like I think a good chunk of your team from Stanford like came with you, your staff, right?
My whole staff did. My whole coaching staff did, other than our sprints coach who was with us. He left to become the head coach at BU at that time, Gabe Sanders. Other than that, I brought my entire staff with me. Which was at the time like huge, like having your people on the ground. And I mean, we literally came together, all of us, like we're moving together, and so yeah, I mean that made it a little bit easier. But like, man, you build those relationships with those athletes, and you build a vision of where it's going. And like, remember, these things don't happen slowly; like they happen instantly. Like no one like interviews for a job they're going to take in 6 months, right? Like I think about our seniors, like they're interviewing now for jobs they're going to take in August. Like we interview for jobs we're going to take in 48 hours, like, and so yeah, it was great that they came. And then the next year, Alex Osberg and Thomas Ratcliffe transferred, and that really like was huge for our program, but also for me to have those guys back. And but yeah, man, that first year was really hard.
Now we're in what, year 6 at UNC?
Yeah, this is year 6. Yep.
Has it felt like a long 6 years, or just like when you went, or because I guess you also had COVID, I guess like the first year, right?
Yeah. Our COVID came in the winter of our very first year, and on some level, that like if there was ever a year that was going to happen to us, like that was the perfect year for it to happen because one, truthfully, we weren't very good, and like taking another seat, like we got to hide for a while and go train and recruit and build up and but yeah, so that was our first year. It's funny, man. I say that, I was just saying that to my wife the other day. I'm like, we're about to be done with year 6 here. We were 7 years at Stanford. In most ways, it feels like this has gone by really fast. Like it's hard to believe like we're closing in on like we're going to have been here equal amounts of time as we were at Stanford, which does not feel that way at all. In the best way, like we just had so much fun and it's just been rolling and every year. And but then when I pause and think about what 2019, 2020 was like to now, I was like, whoa, yeah, we have been here a while, and my kids are growing up here now. Like they feel like this is their home, and they've been growing up here, and we've got an entire team of people that we recruited, and so yeah, but yeah, mostly it feels like it's gone by fast for sure.
When we kind of now that we've kind of gone over the various different steps you've made as a coach, philosophically, I guess like what does sort of Columbia Chris versus like UNC Chris, like when it comes to just sort of the coaching philosophy, like how night and day are those two?
Probably not that night and day different, honestly, in that the most important thing, even when I got into this back then, was relationships and connecting. For me, that's where it all started. That was the experience I had as an athlete. I probably went the other way. What a lot of people, like, you're young and you're just competitive and you are trying to prove yourself. That kind of got me later. Like I got that way later. Like early on, it was more like connecting with these athletes, and I think for me, it's like recentering always on that, like always coming back to that, right? It's like reach the people you have where they're at today. Don't think about where you want to get to in your career or where they like want to get to. It's like, so that part's universal. And to your question earlier about being passionate, I'd like to think I'm probably a little calmer now. It can be a little bit more just like steady hand at the wheel. And, it's like my, don't get me wrong, like my path, I have been incredibly lucky, right? Incredibly lucky. There was just a couple key moments that were completely out of my control that went in my favor, that factors fell into place that I'm sitting here today, right? And a lot of coaches talk about, hey, they had to grind out, these low paying jobs and these tough situations. And truthfully, like I moved up pretty quickly, but there was a flip side to that. It's like I got put in some really challenging situations when I was really young and unprepared too, and had to navigate those. And so don't get me wrong, like I never underestimate like how lucky I've been and how there's coaches who probably are a lot better than me that just didn't get the breaks I got, but with those breaks came some really hard challenges, right? That you don't know until you're in them what it's like. And so I think I've learned from a lot of that and just become a lot steadier over time. Like when I went to Stanford, man, I was 31 years old, right? Like I know at the time that sounded old to me, but like and I had become the head coach at Stanford. Like I was just like, it's like a pretty intoxicating feeling of like, man, and at the same time you're like, holy shit, like I don't really know what I'm doing right now, and I put so much pressure on myself and stressed myself out and wasn't enjoying it nearly enough at the time because I felt so much pressure and Now I think I enjoy it a lot more. Like I think that's probably to answer your question. Like I think I enjoy it more than ever right now.
Yeah, that combination of, luck and hard work that everyone kind of talks about, it's like, yeah, maybe like it's great that you acknowledge sort of like the luck along the way and that the hard work amass itself in different ways, whether it wasn't necessarily just sort of like the stops at the small Division 3 school or whatever it is, but the challenges in, coaching some high level athletes. So then I'm wondering, just like, do you have like any like personal affirmation that you got kind of like go into every day at work or show up to practice that you hope kind of conveys or like trickles down to your athletes?
Yeah, I mean, one of them again, like I said, like enjoy the steps along the way. Like enjoy the steps along the way. I think it is. We have such highly driven people in our program that you need to have that drive, but you need to also enjoy the steps along the way. And you know who's terrible at that? Me. Right? Like so, I think I can relate to them on that a lot. Of hey, let's make sure like we never ever stop pushing. We never ever start trying to figure out how we can get better, and let's enjoy the steps along the way, even the really hard steps that come along the way. So, I think it's that, and I think it's like, man, live your life with intention and purpose. Like live your life with clear intention and purpose. I think that is what the number one thing I want all of our athletes to leave here with is like, man, I'm on a college campus every day, and I walk through campus, and I do think there is a lot of people who just go through their life. They just go through it. They just do what everybody else does. They just follow. And man, I want people that are on fire about their life and what they're doing and how they go about it. And so this thing of ours that we do is really freaking hard. And that's the point, right? That's the point. Is it's we're not like everybody else. Who the heck wants to be like everybody else? Why would you like, And we talk about that openly in our program. It's like, look, man, like come here because you don't want to be a regular college student. And we don't shy away from saying, like, yeah, this is about like being really elite in two spaces, man. We're going to kick ass academically and we're going to try to pursue running at the absolute highest level, whatever that level may be for you. Like, live your life on fire because if you learn how to do that now, man, when you go to the next thing, you're going to crush people, right? Whether you go to Wall Street, you go to medical school, you go to Capital, whatever it is, like most people don't know how to actually do that. So that like is how I live my life pretty clearly. Like I love what I do. Like and to me it's like my job and my family. Like yeah, I don't do much else, man. I don't play golf. I don't, and I'm good. Like I love that. It's our craft. And so anyway, that I think is the number one thing we try to really emphasize in our program is like what you learn here is like how to do something with a high level of intention and purpose.
Yeah, it's an easy trap for, the outside pundits and critics who observe this sport to, pull you into that conversation and be like, well, so, we've got Parker Wolfe and Ethan Strand being like two very promising talents, and like you obviously have worked with Sean McGorty and Grant Fisher over the years. Like, how do they compare, right? And you were, I think when I saw you at BU, you were just like, no, these guys are, potentially even better. And like, it's easy to fall into the trap of comparison, but just sort of, when you do talk and look at sort of potential and big picture, those two guys, like for example, their development, like, how do you kind of keep that in check without getting, even for them, like the noise is already out there. Like, what are these guys going to do come this summer? But keeping them kind of, hey, like we're like, as you kind of said, just sort of, we're not changing what we do. We're on the right track.
Yeah, and I mean that comparison game is fun, right? And to talk in those terms, but like we don't really actually talk that way very often. Like we'll never stop thinking about and talking periodically about like these guys' long term ambitions, what they want to do. But then it's really like, man, let's go back to what we do and take the next logical step and take the next logical step. And so I also think for me, like this is the part I love. And I think I do really, I will say this might sound arrogant, like I think I do this part really, really well is understanding and relating to the mindset of the elites. And I think it's so much more nuanced and difficult than people who haven't done it understand, right? And so understanding guys like Parker, Ethan, somebody like Makayla right now, somebody like I think about Elise, like what the goals and the drive they have, but also the pressure they put on themselves. What especially nowadays in a social media world where like they feel it, like man, I think I'm really, really good with relating to that, like what that person is working through and going through. And I think until you've done it, like it's much different than maybe people anticipate. So, and we just stay basic. We stay grounded. Like these guys are at practice with the team every day, and so was Grant, and so was Sean, and so was Elise. And I think the best thing for Parker and Ethan is having each other too. Like that's a really unique, special thing. It's like they have each other, and they want to stay together. And so, yeah, I'm bouncing around answering your question, but yeah, we stay grounded, but think big too.
So you kind of answered it there where like one of my questions was going to be like, what is your favorite part of your job? That's it?
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite part of my job is as cliche as it may sound, man, the connections, the relationships, right? Like and watching them grow and develop as people. Like that's that's one really important part that will never get old to me is like watching them grow and like Makayla Paige, just watching the confidence with which she ran that race regardless of the outcome. I'm like, man, 2 years ago she wouldn't have done that. That like, man, that ability to own it, because she can do that in anything she does now. Like that is like the most powerful part of the sport, like what we do. I love that part. The part I also really, really love is finding the edges, man. Like finding the edges, like how do we pursue the elite edge of world class performance? And man, I think as I've gotten further, like that part is exciting me more and more as we go on here too. But it doesn't have to be world class. Like how do these people find out how good they can really, really be? And yeah, but yeah, those two things really come together, and just that's the best part.
All right, so we're gonna move to our overrated, underrated segment, which has been really fun to run through with coaches. And this is a lot of the different things that people view as like the edge, like the little tiny marginal gains that we're gaining. So I want your take: overrated, underrated. You get a couple where you could say like properly rated. So we'll start with Alter G.
Probably properly rated, and I don't think we utilize it. We have a boost, not an Alter G, but I don't think we utilize it enough. I think there's probably more spaces we could utilize it with supplemental training. Like meaning people, okay, hey, let's switch and do a double on there. We do that quite a bit, but so I think properly rated. They've certainly been around long enough now that we understand how to utilize them really well.
Double threshold.
Oh man, I listened to this. You asked this. I listened to your previous episodes to get a sense of what you were asking about. And look, we do a lot of double workouts. Okay, are they all double threshold? Definitely not. Do we periodically do that? Yes. Overrated if you think it's that simple. Overrated if you think it's that simple. Like do double threshold workouts. So yes, actually dramatically overrated. Like dramatically overrated. But also I'm not dug in and stubborn of like we're not doing that just because it's trendy. Like, but we thought long and hard about where does this fit? What's the benefits of this, and what are the takeaway, the negatives from this? And we do a lot of double workouts now in there. They're not all double threshold, but there are a lot of double workouts in there.
Yeah, can you share a little bit of just sort of that process where you finally reach the tipping point of like, all right, yeah, no, like this is something that we should implement, where, some people might be just very easy to get caught up and see like, yeah, the Norwegians are doing this, and like now the pros are doing this, and it like the results speak for themselves, but then just how it fits into just a bigger training plan and what you already have in place. Like, when did you reach that point where you're like, all right, like this is how we can mix it in to a degree?
Yeah, I can remember that evolution clearly over the last couple of years. And so, and this will be a long answer, so cut me off at any time. But like, if you go back
All
to
good.
what we considered 8 years ago at Stanford, particularly in that environment, we considered. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. We considered like 8 to 10 times 1,000 a really good long threshold session, right? And a huge part of that was you got to remember the shoe technology hadn't come around yet, right? And so you could only do so much volume in the flats that we had at the time, or you were in your trainers and there was no in between, right? And particularly I remember Sean's Achilles would get sore wearing the flats, so you okay. Then we came here, and I remember when Alex Osberg and Thomas Ratcliffe got here, and it was fall of 2020. We were starting to understand how to utilize the new flats way better, and I remember being on the tobacco trail with Alex and Thomas and our whole team, and all of a sudden we're doing like 6 to 7 by a mile. And we're like, okay, this is way more than Thomas would have previously done. He's recovering quicker. these shoes matter. The surface we're in matters. Like, okay, because the goal is always like, man, how do you get more time under tension, right? That is equally paired with the right amount of recovery. Like, that's the only way you actually benefit from something. Like, there's no secret. Like, if we can do more and equally recover, we're going to get better. Like, that's timeless, right? So we started to nudge up on how much more we thought we could do, right? Well, then it becomes a point where it's like, okay, man, we're doing 8 miles of threshold in a session. And so my cutoff became, okay, we're only going to go to double. We're going to do willing to do more than we're going to do in one single session. To just take this thing and split it, that I didn't fully appreciate yet at the time, like why we would do that. So that's probably like 2021, 22. We start experimenting with it more. And pause for a minute. If you go back, even when I was in college, even like gags at Georgetown to then Henner, double workouts, we did them. We did threshold in the morning and fast neuromuscular work in the afternoon, right? I mean, Gags was doing that in the 90s. Henner did it with us, right? If you look at Vin Lanana's training from the 90s, they were doing that. Like, so it's not like this totally foreign concept that you would do a double session. What has evolved is like doing the same thing twice, right? Instead, those sessions were always two extreme ends right there. So really like probably 2022, that's when we started splitting it more. And now it's like, it has a very clear place for us is it's easier. Like, it's ultimately easier. I think that's where people shy away from it. I talked to a high school coach just the other day, the coach at Cardinal Gibbons, where my daughter is going, who's a good buddy of mine. It's one of his, and we were talking about doing it, and he's like, I don't think I could get, parents and even young people on board with it. And I remember saying, like, Nick, I said, the way you got to sell it to them is it's actually easier. Like, it's going to beat you up less. And so for us, that's, I think, how we utilize it. We can do more work with more recovery in there. And ultimately, like, the shoe technology, the double workouts, the nutritional supplements, what are we all just trying to do? Recover, so we can train 10% harder, 10% sooner, 10% more often. And we're looking for every angle on how to do that. And that's where the double workouts really come in for us.
And then in terms of just like the timing of all of this, like for an athlete like Ethan, is it just perfect timing in the sense that, like, as you're experimenting with this, he's also just sort of in, the biggest development phase of his own career?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's where, in fairness to everybody that has come in the past, right, is like, it is an apples to orange comparison sometimes if you take what somebody was doing 8-10 years ago and just compare their performances to now. Like, man, if Emily Info was in college today and it took 425 to make the national meet, or 428 indoors and 425, you know what she'd run? 424. Like, she just would, because you're that good and you're a product of the situation that you're in at the time, right? And the same thing could be said for Grant, for Bob Kennedy, it could be said, right? Like, I think you could, it's so, in fairness, I don't know if all of a sudden we had this like gene pool of talent that came. I think it's all these factors that like are coinciding in our sport right now of like, advances in the shoe technology, the nutrition, understanding of training concepts, homogenous training, meaning like, and I stole that line from Dave Smith, is like, man, we all know information now. Like, we all know we all know what everybody's doing now. Like, I think for years, and really Mike Smith was on the leading edge of this, is like, I mean, a huge part of his advantage is like he was doing stuff in training that none of us had figured out yet, right? Okay, but over the last 5-8 years, like, the information is spreading so rapidly that that's not really where the advantages lie anymore, right? The advantages lie in the implementation now, right? They lie in like the space between the notes, right? Like, great music is the space between the notes. Like, we all know the notes now. It's like, how are you creating the space between the notes really well? That's where the advantages lie now, I think. And I just think, yeah, those people in the past would be doing it too.
Yeah. Poor Pre. I guess I saw that stat that he would have never like qualified for like NCAA indoors with like all of his PRs. But to your point, I guess like if you would have put the same guy like in all the circumstances we have now, he probably would have made it. All right, we'll keep going on our list. Blood lactate testing.
Overrated. And I say that like we don't do it. And I have a master's degree in exercise physiology. I did a ton of that in grad school. I understand it. And I also think, like, when you are dealing with an 18 to 22-year-old who is in the development stage of their career, well, two things. One, keep the main thing, right? So we talk about at practice, what are we optimizing for? We're optimizing to do the thing on Friday night, right? We're optimizing to do the thing on Saturday, okay? if every day all we are optimizing for is biometrics, how does they're not teaching us to do the thing on Saturday? It's not. So we optimize for doing the thing on Saturday, doing the thing on Friday night. And don't get me wrong, I understand the scientific value of it. And at some point, yeah, we're trying to go from 348 to 346. Yeah, we're in the mile. We're going to need to really look at that. Man, I'm sorry, but I think about the average American college freshman. That's not actually where they're going to get better. There's a lot of spaces they can get better first before you need to explore that. And I think a lot of young people latch onto those things because they're easy. They're easy. One of my sophomore guys, I will never forget this. His freshman year, last year, he has a great workout, right? We're out the tobacco trail. He has an awesome workout. He's really pumped. Come home that evening, I open his training logs, and his notes say, "Man, I felt really good about this workout until I got home and downloaded my stuff off my Garmin, and my heart rate was different than I thought." And I was like, "Oh my God." Oh my God, man. I'm like, dude, in that moment, you had a great workout. You felt great about what you did. You knew what we were working on. That's what matters. So anyway, long and stress me, I think highly at the college level, overrated. The second part is, man, if you're a really, really good coach, it's intuitive. And I'm not saying I always get this right, but I work on that. I can stand and watch Parker and Ethan right now, and I know exactly what I'm looking at. I know exactly what I'm looking at, and I would almost bet for sure those markers would confirm it, but it's being in tune and in touch too.
No, I love that. Super shoes, I guess you hit on this already. Properly rated?
Two different forms. Spikes and the flats, or the workout shoes, right? There's so many different variations of them now. Where they're underrated is the training effect, right? They're overrated in the racing effect, I think. Don't get me wrong, they matter in the racing effect for sure. But where they're overrated is there, where they're underrated is in the training effect, right? Think about even now, if a guy runs a hard 5,000, 10,000 in the new shoes, they can train again on Tuesday. The old days, they couldn't train for a week. So it's compound interest. It's just that ability to train again sooner. And that's the part that I don't think is getting enough recognition for why we're getting so much better.
Soft surfaces.
Overrated for this reason. The shoe technology now, right? Okay, so in our day, it probably was really, 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 really important. And if you have a choice to run on soft surface, sure, go for it. I don't think it needs to be stressed nearly as much now, given the shoe technology that we have and the protection they offer. Second is changing surfaces worries me more. Changing surfaces where I think consistency and just being on what you're used to is way more meaningful than constantly shifting and changing all the time. And the last part I'll say is when I was in college, we were so obsessed with soft surface that we ran on these terrible rocky trails, right? But they were soft. But man, you're running all over the place. I don't know if that trade-off was worth it. I think it might have been better just on the roads where the footing was good too.
Pacing lights. You guys haven't run with them at all, right?
Yeah, I had minimal experience with them. We ran one meet at New Balance. Our guys ran a 5K, some of our younger guys did. First time I'd never really seen them. I think there's something there for sure. There's something there. If you're trying to run a time, there's something there. So yeah, I would say unknown for me.
BU's track.
Okay, I was sitting there this year on the backstretch. You were sitting right there. And I watched a guy do the triple jump down the runway there. And I said, oh my God, look at the ground. It went down underneath him and came back up. Literally down underneath him and came back up. And I was like, is that what's happening out there right now? And I think it is. I don't think you can deny, man. There is something there. That energy return piece, there is something there. But you got to go to other places to win the championship meets, right? So you can't be dependent on that. But there's definitely something there, but mostly I'd say overrated.
Bicarb.
Oh, man. Yeah, I would say unknown. We're in a very, very experimental phase on this right now. Ethan Strand, big believer, one of the early adopters of it. I learned the most about it through, again, adopting it with him. There is definitely something there. There's definitely something there. We understand, I think, pretty well what's happening. but I still think we're learning a lot about it. But again, man, like the average college sophomore running 1350, man, I'm sorry, there's a lot more room for growth than before you need that. You know, it's one of the things I struggle with in my program right now, to be honest with you, is Ethan, Parker. Yeah, man, to be honest, like we're looking for these really, really small, minute edges. That stuff matters. And the wrong message is like for somebody to think that bicarb is why Ethan Strand got good. You know? And like I message out with my team every day when we talk about this stuff is like, because we got a really young team that's building into next year. It's like, guys, the basics are what gets you 95% of the way first. And then that might matter down the road. But if you think you're skipping over to that mattering, we've skipped like A through Y steps first.
Weightlifting.
Essential, underrated, dramatically underrated, huge part of what we do. Um, it's got to be applied properly, and it's got to be very, very much in sync with what you're doing in your running training. But I learned that from Pat Henner 20 years ago, and we've evolved it dramatically. But like, huge part of what we do: strong, powerful athletes who can handle training. Right? We're not the reason we lift weights is to be able to train harder, and it enables you to train harder and stay healthy as you do it.
Cross training while healthy.
Right now, overrated. I think it's trendy right now. I think it's hugely trendy right now. I mean, it is like really crazy to watch like how these trends oscillate like now because people follow what so and so is doing on Instagram. Like right now, treadmills are super trendy, right? Like I look out my window in my facility right now, and it's a beautiful day out here, and I got people around the treadmill downstairs because NAU runs on treadmills, and they're like, oh, that's why. That's not why the NAU is good, right? But it's amazing how these things flow, and I guess right now, cross training's having a moment. It sounds like, and what I believe is like you need to develop the engine and the chassis in conjunction, right? And every time your foot hits the ground, your muscles, your tendons, your bones, your joints, they are adapting and building resistance, right? And if the engine gets built out of sync from those, that's how you're going to get hurt, right? So like, and you see this when people like cross train like crazy while they're hurt, and then they come back and they get hurt again because honestly they're too fit for what their muscles, tendon, bones, and joints are ready to do. So the two have to develop in conjunction over time. There. So yeah, we use it some, but I would say mostly overrated right now.
Altitude. It's kind of crazy just like how well, both Ethan and Gary, ran this indoor season without a stint at altitude at all.
Yeah, I would say properly rated. But I think with this caveat, when, where, and why in somebody's long-term growth and development. Okay. I don't want to throw this. I should not say this because I don't have statistical information to back it up. But I think if you looked at over the last 30 years, the college altitude guys post-collegiate development versus the C-level guys post-collegiate development, a lot of those altitude college kids don't get a whole lot better as pros. There are outliers for sure, but on the average, their post-collegiate growth curve is much shorter on the average. I think there comes a point in your development where you need to go to altitude to take maybe, or necessarily need, you're ready to go and maximize on it, right? Grant, Sean leaving college, it was time. Like they were ready for that. Parker and Ethan, they're ready for that. They're going to take a huge bump from that. But I think if we'd have gone 3 years ago, I think it would have wiped them out. Like I think they'd been exhausted. I don't. So I think it's a properly rated. But again, it's not a catch-all, right? Like it's not a catch-all. Like you still got to actually go do the work too.
Strides.
Depending on how you define them, underrated. But I would say for us in our system, like we don't just haphazardly do strides, right? Like it's very, very structured. And this is a relic of Pat Henner's training that has stuck with me forever. Is like whether you run the 10K or you run the 800 with us, at least once a week we sprint. Like we spike up and sprint at least once a week for really short durations, 40 meters, 80 meters, 120 meters, and build neuromuscular efficiency and power in there. And so I think just doing strides on a field after you run, I mean, it's not bad, but I don't think it's doing much for you. Like we do them with very, very clear intention as to what we're trying to get out of it.
Jogging rest.
Man, I'm so just like habitually used to doing. That's what we've always done. I would say properly rated.
Okay.
That probably really doesn't matter. It probably really doesn't matter, but there's a mentality to it for sure of like being able to keep moving.
All right, that's all of the overrated, underrated. My final question for you, Coach Milt is, I guess, like, father, husband, coach to just like dozens of athletes. Like, how do you manage to find a way to, I mean, this is so easy when people ask it of like female coaches and like how they balance the family and all that stuff, but very similarly here too, like how do you manage to show up as the best version of yourself in all of those different capacities? It just doesn't feel like 24 hours in a day is enough.
Yeah, it certainly does feel that way more often than not lately. And man, I have four kids. Like I have three girls and one boy. My oldest daughter is almost 15. My son's almost 13, and I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I mean, my wife is absolute freaking superstar. Like, which is a huge understatement. Like this whole thing we do, our family, our life, moving back and forth, all the things we've done, solely 100% work because of her and my ability to do this thing. And so I just think we have a really, really unique, awesome, incredible flow that is not ever perfect and certainly not easy, but like, man, I love what I do. I'm really clear on what's important to me. Like my family and my work and the two are very, very highly integrated too. Like my kids are around our athletes all the time. Our athletes are around our kids all the time, like, because it's the only way I can check both at the same time, like I don't, so, but it's not always easy, man. Like I say, like there are many days I feel like I'm just keeping up, but but I don't know, man, I love it. Like I love every aspect of it. And so, I think it's that, and just, yeah, never ever forget, like you get to do this. Like I get to do this. Like I think for my wife and I, like that's never been lost on us. Like when I started when I was 23 and we weren't married yet, but I was like, man, I think I want to get into this crazy coaching thing. And I was like, I mean, back then it was like a vow of poverty. It was like joining the priesthood. It was like, okay, man, like if you talk to those older coaches back then, they would be like, man, I don't know if you're like Marcus O'Sullivan, who I love. I called Marcus for advice, and he said, don't do it. He said, don't do it. Like, I was 24 years old, and he's like, I was like, can I volunteer with you? And he's like, don't do it. He's like, this is like, it's way too hard of a life. Nobody gets paid. And so, the fact that here we are today, and like we have this incredible life, like we live in Chapel Hill with our kids. I'm at the University of North Carolina. My kids, like, it's just like, wait a minute, this worked. Like this worked. Like my last summer at Georgetown, my son was born, and we had two kids, and I remember like really clearly being like, okay, we can either pay for daycare or we can pay our mortgage, but we definitely can't pay both. Like, what are we going to do? And then we went to Stanford. It's just like things have worked out. So as hard and crazy as it gets some days, like that is never, ever lost on us. Like, man, life is awesome. So I mean, if you start from that place, then you make it all work.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking the time for this. This has been a blast, and I'm excited to see just kind of like the momentum off of this really successful indoor season carry over into the outdoor season. It's a long year ahead, but like hopefully all good things ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, man. I love these. I've listened to every one of these coaching chats you're doing, and they're my favorite ones by far. So I appreciate you having me on.
I guess like here's a new thing I'll try and implement is you get to ask a question to the next coach that I'm going to interview. And so my next coach will be Julie Benson. What is a question you think would be a good question for Julie Benson?
Oh, man. Okay. So, I mean, we are very, very, very close with Julie Benson. Julie was my wife's coach in college. Julie was at one time married to Pat Henner. Like, we are very, very close with them. And, man, what would I ask Julie? I mean, Julie's seen it all from the college side through Jenny Behringer winning the world championship. Here's what I will tell you, bar none. Julie Benson is the best person I have ever met at getting somebody to believe in themselves. Like the best. Like that was true when we were in college. I watch her do it now. The best. And so what I would ask Julie is, why has she never scaled it and taken on like a big college job? Because she could do anything she wants. And I think it's because, like, I'd like to hear her explain, like, she's always stayed true to doing it, like, the way she believes, which is being really personally connected and really dialed in. And, I mean, Julie is one of the best coaches in America that doesn't really ever get talked about nearly enough. And having been up close and watched it with when she had Chris Lukezic and then Jenny and, like, oh, yeah, man, like, unbelievable. And I always say this is, like, Julie – now it's awesome. Like we have a lot of great, great women in coaching and hopefully more coming up. But like Julie was the first one, and I was exposed to who was just like badass doing it, like didn't back down from anybody. And so I would ask her about those experiences, like in the late '90s and early 2000s coming up. And so, but yeah, ask her like how has she always stayed true to doing it her way.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate it, Coach Milt. I'm sure I'll catch you during the outdoor season at some point.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for everything you're doing for the sport. It's awesome.